Coming up on BCN today, healthcare workers protest government cuts outside Chinook Regional Hospital. Plus, the province says it could close or relocate some of Alberta's safe consumption sites. Could Lethbridge be on the list? And we speak with a Lethbridge man once homeless who now wants to give back.
Your Canada. Your Southern Alberta. Your stories. From our studios in the heart of Lethbridge, it's BCN Today with Jeanette Roche.
Hello and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. A rally was held at Chinook Regional Hospital Tuesday by members of the Alberta Union and provincial employees who were protesting healthcare cuts. Close to 300 union members were out calling on the province to stop what it calls waging war on the healthcare industry and public sector employees.
We have a government that is more interested in looking after huge corporations by giving them huge tax breaks, rather than looking after the actual people that elected them to serve the people. And that's a huge concern for us, and it should be a concern for all Albertans.
What we're hoping is that Mr. Kenney and then Mr. Taves, the finance minister, will think about what they're going to do in the budget and realize that making cuts to the public service is not going to solve the problems that we have in Alberta economically. And balancing the books at the cost of our public services is simply a ridiculous idea. And what we'll do is rob us of the public services that we all rely on. It will exacerbate the economic problems through job loss, and it will make us a weaker province when we need to be the strongest we've ever been.
AUPE is Western Canada's largest union with more than 96,000 members. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf says he can understand the frustration of union members, but says some tough choices need to be made in order to help Alberta get back on a balanced budget.
I just think that these things do come about on a fairly regular basis. It is quite normal for this kind of protest to take place during negotiation, particularly when we're seeking change to control costs as we go forward. And I do think all of Alberta is aware of our fiscal situation, that we have to do things to make sure that we're being responsible with the money and funds that we have. And we're taking a deeper look at some of the items within these contracts at this time when the contract is open and it's appropriate to do so. There will be things that the unions and other sides agree with and things that they don't, and that's part of the process.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says a preliminary report finds neighborhoods with supervised drug consumption sites have more crime and property damage. The report by a government-appointed panel looked into how the sites affect communities and businesses. Kenney says the findings reinforce his government's concerns, and it's possible the province could close or relocate the sites. But New Democrat Shannon Phillips says more people would die and the crime rate will increase if the site in Lethbridge is shut down. Starting in April, up to 15% of operational funding provided to schools through grants will be linked to enrollment, graduation rates, and filling job market needs. That number will increase to 40% of funding by 2022. The opposition NDP says Alberta's new funding model for post-secondary institutions will tie schools and students up in more red tape without addressing the real problem. The New Democrats say Advanced Education Minister Dimitrios Nicolaides should instead be focusing on undoing devastating cuts to advanced education. Nicolaides says the change will build a stronger post-secondary system that ensures taxpayer dollars are used for teaching and research instead of growing administration. Lethbridge City Council this week heard about the feasibility of an Indigenous Cultural Center. Perry Stein, the Indigenous Relations Advisor, says a safe center is needed to help keep Indigenous culture alive in our region.
Over the course of the last 5 or 6 months, we've had a really robust engagement program. We've engaged members of the urban Indigenous community, Lethbridge residents at large, and also members of the Blackfoot Confederacy Nations and the Métis Nation. Things that we've been hearing from the community are that First off, an Indigenous cultural center is something that people are quite interested in and keen for. There seems to be quite an opportunity or a gap in the community from a tourism perspective, from a cultural perspective, from a health and wellness perspective. People are looking for something like this to help either bridge the gaps between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, or provide opportunities for people to connect back to 10, 15,000 years of Blackfoot history in this area.
The town of Tabor announced that it has decided to move forward in purchasing land, which will become the future home of the new Tabor Chamber office. The town purchased 1.3 acres of land located at 5431 47th Avenue. Town council says that it's another way to help drive Tabor's economic growth as its business community continues to expand. The new location will allow the chamber greater exposure, being visible from Highway 3. The chamber will be responsible for costs associated for their new building. No word yet on when construction will begin. The agency responsible for approving and assessing energy development in Alberta is laying off staff as it deals with budget cuts. The Alberta Energy Regulator says it laid off a couple dozen staff yesterday, with more to come by the end of February. Gordon Lambert, interim CEO, says the changes are part of a restructuring that aims to make the regulator more effective, efficient, and resilient. Last October, the government announced that the AER would lose about 22% of its operating budget. Lambert says while it is a difficult time for staff, the AER will continue to protect public safety and the environment while ensuring responsible energy development. An Air St. Pierre passenger plane arrived at St. John's International Airport this morning, the first to land since commercial flights were canceled after Friday's blizzard. The Newfoundland and Labrador capital remains under a state of emergency for a 6th day as the military responds to hundreds of calls for assistance from vulnerable residents. Taxi companies can take calls starting today, but personal vehicles are still ordered to stay off the road. Police, divers, and a helicopter are expected to join today's search for 5 tourists from France who are missing after a group of snowmobilers plunged through the ice late last night near Lac Saint-Jean, Quebec. Their 42-year-old local guide died several hours after he was admitted to hospital. One person was taken to hospital after being pulled from the water by 3 other members of the group who made it to shore and were treated for hypothermia. Police say the area is off the usual trails where snowmobiles are normally allowed to operate. We may have survived last week's extreme cold snap, but experts are hoping mountain pine beetles didn't. Temperatures around Jasper, Hinton, and Sundre, which are key battlegrounds in the fight against pine beetles, dipped below -40 during that polar vortex. University of Alberta Biological Sciences professor Janice Cook says early projections show that it might have been enough to wipe out more than 95% of the pine beetle larvae.
The temperatures were so low that we see really significant winter kill of mountain pine beetles. A pair of mountain pine beetles can easily produce 40 offspring. So you can imagine that if none of those offspring are killed by winter temperatures, then they're all going to grow up to be beetles, and that's going to be a huge increase in the population year over year over year. Having these winter killing temperatures 2 years in a row, it doesn't kill all the beetles, but it kills a lot of them. Lethbridge is on the route to another important pine forest that has also been impacted heavily by mountain pine beetle, and that's Cypress Hills. So I would like to remind all of your viewers in the Lethbridge area to not transport firewood, because this is one way that we can introduce mountain pine beetle to those precious forests and possibly cause even more damage than the natural spread of the beetle itself.
A spokesperson from Alberta Forestry says it typically takes a few years of large-scale cold events to cause notable mortality rates in pine beetles. Children have the right to play, and there is a growing movement in Lethbridge dedicated to celebrating it. The first ever Play Summit took place Tuesday at the Lethbridge Public Library. Mayor Chris Spearman signed the Play Charter, which enforces a child's right to play. Vicki Hazelwood with the Lethbridge Early Years Coalition says the Play Charter helped to create a unified voice.
The Lethbridge Play Charter was put together by over 25 organizations in our community that value play and value youth and children having play as a priority in their lives.
One of the lightning presentations during the Lunch and Learn will be presented by the Lethbridge Sport Council, and we'll be talking about our roving gym programs that we've been offering. So roving gyms is actually a program that started with the Lethbridge Early Years Coalition, and this winter the Lethbridge Sport Council has taken it over. We got in a couple of fantastic grants, so we were able to buy lots of new equipment, and so we offer the roving gyms at various locations around the city on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and it's just a free play space for children and their caregivers to come and play and be active.
For more information on roving gyms, visit lethbridgesportcouncil.ca. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland says Ottawa is trying to find common ground with people and politicians across the country. While in Winnipeg, she said Canadians must all remain unified.
I think there is a profound commitment to Canada across our country. I think there is a profound appreciation in this time of tremendous global uncertainty and tremendous global challenges, whether they are geopolitical or economic. What I heard from people was an appreciation of how remarkable Canada is, and that we need to be committed together to keeping Canada strong, keeping Canada united, keeping Canada able to act together to address the pressing challenges of our time.
The World Health Organization is meeting to determine if the outbreak of coronavirus in China should be declared a global emergency. A professor of emerging infectious diseases at Oxford University believes the virus has already met the 3 criteria for such a determination, including the risk of international spread. The new viral illness has killed 17 and infected more than 500 people, and Chinese officials are warning that it could spread further. 3 potential cases of the virus in Canada were investigated and ruled out. Meanwhile, the U.S. has reported its first case of the virus. A Washington state resident returning from China last week was hospitalized, and U.S. officials are now screening arriving passengers from China for signs of the coronavirus.
From November to January 15th, we had a Washington state resident, a man in his 30s, who was in Wuhan, China. On January 20th, samples were confirmed by the CDC in Atlanta that, in fact, he carried the novel coronavirus, and he was hospitalized, and we're very happy to say that he is in satisfactory condition, and as of this moment is being it's very helpful in us identifying particular people that he may have been in contact with.
U.S. senators appeared to be struggling to pay attention as arguments in U.S. President Donald Trump's impeachment trials stretched past midnight. About a third of these senators are up for re-election, and anyone caught falling asleep on camera during only the 3rd impeachment trial in history would have some splaining to do. The urge to nod off stems in part from the familiarity of the arguments, but both sides are using audio-visual aids to keep senators awake. Phones and coffee are banned, as well as talking and passing notes. Opening statements begin today at the New York City rape trial of disgraced Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. The once powerful producer is accused of raping a woman in 2013 and forcing himself on another woman in 2006. The defense plans to tell the court that Weinstein's accusers sent him, quote, dozens and dozens of loving emails. Prosecutors plan to show photos of the 6 women who will testify that Weinstein sexually assaulted them. Well, the meltdown continues for our region thanks to that Chinook, and it looks like those warmer temperatures will be staying with us for a while. Full weather details are coming up right after the break. And welcome back. Here's a look at our weather highlights for today and tomorrow in Lethbridge. Well, thanks to that lovely Chinook, we've got lovely temperatures. 5 degrees is the high today with a low of -1 overnight. And then into tomorrow, a high of 8 degrees and a low of 5 degrees over tomorrow evening. Now, be warned also that we're looking at wind. With Chinooks come wind of 60 km/h gusts. 10 degrees on Friday, 8 degrees on Saturday, and 4 degrees on Sunday, giving us a lovely weekend into next week. 6 degrees on Monday, and 4 degrees is the high for Tuesday. Mainly sunny temperatures, or sunny skies with a mix of scattered clouds there. The highs and lows for this time of year: average high -2, average low -14. The highest temperature on this day was recorded in 1942. It was 15 degrees, and the lowest temperature -38. That was in 1969. The sun rose this morning at 8:17 a.m. and will be setting this evening at 5:09 p.m. I believe that is 2 minutes longer than the sunset was yesterday. Looking to our highs across the nation today, Victoria and Vancouver will see highs of 9 degrees. Chance of scattered showers there. Flurries expected up in Edmonton today with a high of -2, and a lovely 4-degree day in Calgary with lots of sunshine. Looking over to Saskatchewan, Saskatoon should see possible flurries with a mix of sun and cloud. -5 there, -4 is the high in Regina, and -6 is Winnipeg's high today, with some scattered clouds there as well. And looking into the east, Toronto's high -1 mix of sun and cloud, chance of flurries over in Ottawa with a high of 0. Montreal's high is 1 degree, and they're going to see some lovely sunny skies out there. Over in Atlantic Canada, St. John's is looking at a sunny day, -6 as they're entering their 6th day of a state of emergency. Charlottetown's high -6, same thing for Fredericton. Fredericton could see some scattered flurries today, and the high today in Halifax is -4 with a mix of sun and cloud. That's your forecast. Here's a look at what's coming up in your community.
Here's your Bridge City News Community Calendar. Night to Shine is an event sponsored by the Tim Tebow Foundation and hosted by My Victory Lethbridge on Friday, February 7th. Night to Shine is an unforgettable prom night experience for people with special needs ages 14 and older. This complimentary event begins on a red carpet with guests receiving the royal treatment, including hair and makeup stations, limousine rides, a catered dinner, and much more. For details and to register, visit myvictory.ca. And if you'd like to volunteer, email carol@myvictory.ca. Do you have a flair for the dramatic and great comedic timing? Shakespeare in the Park is holding auditions for the 2020 season of Shakespeare's comedy, The Merry Wives of Windsor, on Friday, January 31st from 7 to 9 p.m. in the A2B Community Room at CASA. Come prepared to present a 1 to 2 minute monologue. To sign up, email steph.savage88@gmail.com. Blankets for Canada Lethbridge meets Thursdays from 10 a.m. to noon at Southminster United Church. Share your knitting and crocheting skills to keep those who are in need in our community warm. Donations of yarn and financial gifts are greatly appreciated and can be dropped off at the church. For more information, visit blanketsforcanada.ca or call 403-329-6586. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
What does it mean when a semi-truck flashes its hazard lights on the road? Today's Daily Life Hack has the answer. When an 18-wheeler starts flashing its hazard lights on the highway, it means the driver is slowing down faster than normal because of congestion or an accident up ahead. Make sure to stay back. And there you go. That's been your Daily Life Hack. Good safety tip there. I had no idea. For the average Lethbridge resident, winter weather usually means a slower commute and a few minutes outside shoveling the walkway. But for the homeless, winter is much more than that and can pose major risks. One Lethbridge man who used to be homeless wants to give back now, as Loris Alexander explains that he's doing so with blankets.
Sterling Anderson once looked down on the destitute, attributing their homelessness to negligence.
Prior, my views are, they're lazy, they just they just need to, maybe read some self-help books, read some motivation books.
Anderson's views have since changed when he himself experienced homelessness last February, and it was negligence that got him there.
I struggled with mental illness, depression, anxiety, Asperger's, and I just kind of felt like a black sheep in the flock, and I just kind of felt tired of it all.
Anderson says it taught him humility. He sought help.
I had to learn to ask for help first, because prior I had a very low opinion of help. I thought that one could get along in the world by his own bootstraps.
After a lot of reflection, Anderson has made it a goal to help bring warmth to those on the streets. No judgment, just blankets and winter clothing.
Over the last year, I've kind of tried to be a little bit more charitable and do kind of small acts of charity to try and balance out the selfishness that I held.
If you would like to donate blankets to help with Anderson's initiative, drop-off centers include Streets Alive, the Soup Kitchen, and the Supervised Consumption Site. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Thank you, Loris. Many couples visit countries around the world to go on missions trips. Last August, a couple from Northern Ireland had their lives changed forever when they visited Pakistan. As we hear in this next report, the couple is now part of a charity to help countless children who are enslaved. It's called Rescue Their Cry.
A Christian couple from Northern Ireland are on a mission to rescue child slaves in Pakistan after a life-changing trip to the country where they saw firsthand the exploitation of those known as the brickyard children. Maurice and Maureen Wiley have launched a charity called Rescue Their Cry to help set these young people free from this life of slavery. Maureen says one of the first things they were able to provide was clean drinking water for these enslaved children.
Working in the heat of the day, some unclothed, permanent marks on their shoulders from carrying the bricks, and yet here they were, waiting on water, being pumped out for the first time. But I've never seen children so desperate to get a drink before, to keep them healthy, to keep them alive really. And I think that was the part that touched the most, was seeing that these are lives that we can help.
Wiley concluded by explaining how they're seeking to provide long-lasting freedom to these young lives through a rescue centre called the Ark.
So our objective at this moment is keep them alive as best we know how to do, with the future prospects of bringing them out. Teaching them, we have teachers at hand ready to teach them. We've been promised that they can get jobs in a secure city. And once they have built up a revenue of income for themselves and know how to manage life again, really, then they can go forward. And that's why it's going to be called the Ark. We're going to call this the Ark because this is them coming out 2 by 2. And we do believe that that's what God has given us, and they can then go forward and walk in the fullness of who they're meant to be in this life.
Peter Wooding for the Global News Alliance.
Losing your job can be devastating. How will you pay the mortgage, feed your family? Brian Dykema is the Vice President of External Affairs for the think tank Curtis, and he says when you lose your job, it affects more than just your bank account.
You're not going to work just by yourself and working in a sort of a walled-in environment. You're working with colleagues. You have people that you work with projects on, that you talk to. And when that disappears, it's a loss of more than just some numbers in your bank account. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this paper. We're trying to show the broad effects of losing work and the broad positive effects of working for all people.
Brian will have more on how a job loss can impact our health to the point of causing a potential car accident. That's coming up in the second half of our show right after this short break.